Worst prison food in Attica Prison. Secrets of America's Deadliest Lockup. The smell of revolt. If you think the riots were the worst thing that ever happened inside Attica, you've never stepped inside its kitchen. Subscribe, because what you're about to hear was never meant to reach the outside world. The smell came first. A thick, metallic stench that clung to the air, heavy with grease, mildew, and something else, something sour like spoiled meat baking under steam. It drifted through Attica Correctional Facility's corridors long before dawn, a warning sign for what was to come that morning. It was 5:37 a.m. when inmate Joseph Bones Rayner collapsed in the chow line. Witnesses said his tray hit the concrete first, a gray puddle of something that might have been oatmeal, might have been glue. His body followed, trembling, eyes rolling back. By the time the guards rushed over, Bones was convulsing, foam bubbling from his lips. His cellmates swore he'd been complaining for days, vomiting after every meal, stomach cramps so bad he'd started skipping food entirely. When the nurse finally arrived, it was too late. Official cause: dehydration and malnutrition. Unofficial cause, whispered among the inmates: the food. The kitchen that time forgot in Attica's East Wing, past the laundry block and the old segregation cells, sits the prison kitchen, a windowless fortress of steel counters and cracked tile, where the smell of decay never truly leaves. It's been this way for decades. Guards call it the dungeon. Inmates call it the pit. The ovens date back to the 1960s. The freezers hum like dying engines. Water leaks from rusted pipes, forming oily puddles that reflect the flickering fluorescent lights above. And the food? Every morning, the same parade of misery: lukewarm coffee that tastes like burnt tar, powdered eggs that crumble like chalk, and the infamous Attica loaf, a single brown brick made of everything left over from yesterday's trays. Beans, carrots, bread, sometimes even macaroni, mashed together and baked until hard. Former inmate Leonard Trigger Mays once described it in an affidavit. They said it's got protein. I say it's got punishment. Every bite tastes like they're reminding you you're nothing. But Trigger wasn't the first to complain. The state had been receiving reports about Attica's food since before the infamous 1971 Uprising, the deadliest prison riot in American history. Even then, inmates had protested the rotten meals and disrespect in the kitchen. The rebellion began over broken promises. But it started quietly with breakfast. The inspection that never happened in 2019, a prison reform group called Justice Inside sent a request to inspect Attica's food preparation facilities. They never received approval. The Department of Corrections claimed ongoing maintenance prevented access. Months later, the group's co-founder, Dr. Evelyn Marks, received an anonymous envelope at her office in Albany. Inside were 3 photographs: a tray of what looked like ground meat, covered in a greenish film, a close-up of bread crawling with small black insects, a kitchen drain clogged with something dark and fibrous, possibly hair, possibly worse. There was no note. Only a single word written on the envelope in block letters: enough. Marks took the photos to the State Inspector General's office. They told her they'd look into it. They never did. Inside the kitchen that same year, inmate Malik Davis, serving 25 to life for armed robbery, was transferred to Attica after years at Sing Sing. He'd heard the stories: the ghost of the 1971 riot, the guards who still called inmates by racial slurs, the frigid winters. But nothing prepared him for the kitchen. Assigned to food service as part of his job rotation, Malik's first morning started with a bang, literally. The walk-in freezer door slammed shut behind him, trapping him inside for nearly 10 minutes. By the time another inmate opened it, his hands were blue. He laughed it off, until he realized the smell wasn't from spoiled meat. It was the odor of something long dead. There were rumors that an inmate had died in that freezer decades ago, during the chaos of the 1971 riot, and that the body had been lost in the paperwork. Unconfirmed, of course, but Malik swore he heard rats scratching from behind the wall, as if something were buried inside it. By week 2, he'd stopped eating altogether. He claimed the rice had worms. The soup was cloudy, sour, and greasy at once. He tried to report it, but the guards laughed. Attica ain't a restaurant, one said. You don't like the food, don't eat. The first death. A month later, another inmate, Christopher Vega, 29, convicted on drug charges, was found unresponsive in his bunk. His stomach was bloated. His skin had turned a pale, waxy gray. Medical report: severe bacterial infection consistent with foodborne illness. The warden's office immediately released a statement. There is no evidence to suggest the illness originated in the facility kitchen. But that wasn't true. Vega had been working in the kitchen for weeks. And he wasn't the only one sick. Within days, dozens of inmates reported stomach cramps, vomiting, and fever. The infirmary filled up. The guards blamed the flu. But the flu doesn't make your vomit smell like bleach. Malik Davis started documenting everything he saw: dates, meal batches, who cooked what. He smuggled notes through an inmate porter named Rico, who worked near the mailroom. Rico knew people on the outside: activists, journalists, former cons. But one morning, Rico disappeared. The guards said he was transferred. The inmates said they found him hanging in his cell. Unconfirmed. The silence of the guards. The kitchen staff changed after that. The friendlier guards, those who turned a blind eye when inmates took an extra slice of bread, were reassigned. Their replacements were harder, quieter. One in particular, Officer Dempsey, ran the kitchen like a boot camp. You follow the list, you follow the time, and you don't ask questions, he'd say. His eyes were gray, cold, empty of empathy. Malik once saw Dempsey pour a bucket of spoiled milk down the drain, then order inmates to refill it with tap water and powdered mix. Nobody's gonna notice, Dempsey said. It's all the same anyway. When Malik whispered about the food situation to another inmate, he was thrown into solitary the next day. Contraband communication, they called it. He served 7 days in the dark. When he got out, all his notes were gone. But something had changed. The smell in the kitchen had gotten worse. The journalist. Enter Maya Delaney, an investigative reporter from Buffalo. She'd been digging into Attica's recent death statistics and noticed a spike in non-violent fatalities. Dozens in 2 years. Most listed as unknown causes. When she requested interviews with staff, she was denied. When she wrote to inmates, her letters came back marked undeliverable. Then one day, she received a single envelope, no return address. Inside was a short letter written in shaky handwriting: "They're feeding us death. Check the kitchen logs, September 2019. M.D." Attached was a photo of a meal tray, gray loaf, watery beans, a slice of bread with something moving on it. Maya recognized the initials. M.D. Malik Davis. She knew she had to move fast. The hidden ledger. The key to exposing Attica wasn't in the prison. It was in Albany. Through an anonymous source in the Department of Corrections, Maya obtained access to archived shipment records. 4 months in 2019, Attica had been receiving expired military surplus rations, MREs, powdered milk, canned goods, under a private vendor contract. The documents listed over $2 million in cost savings for the state. In short, they were feeding inmates outdated military food. Some of it decades old. But one record stood out: a delivery marked special commodity, non-cataloged protein. No supplier listed. No description. When she cross-referenced the invoice code, she found it tied to a single name: Dempsey Logistics, owned by a retired corrections officer named Robert Dempsey. The same Dempsey who ran the kitchen. The boiling point. Inside Attica, word spread fast. Inmates started refusing meals. Guards cracked down. The warden declared a food protest lockdown. But behind closed doors, even some officers started to worry. One admitted, off the record, that his own food had made him sick twice that year. Another said the warden ordered all kitchen complaints destroyed before auditors arrived. The tension grew thick, like steam before a boil. By November, the chow hall was a powder keg. Malik Davis had returned to kitchen duty under surveillance. His eyes were sunken, his frame thin, but his resolve unbroken. He'd managed to hide a small recorder in the pantry, smuggled in by another inmate working maintenance. What he captured would later shake the state. The tape. The recording began with the sound of clanging metal trays, footsteps, and a low hum of machinery. Then a voice, gravelly, impatient. "Officer Dempsey, throw the bad batch in the back. No one's gonna check it. Just mix it in tomorrow. Inmate worker, it's turning green, man. Dempsey, it's fine. They don't eat it, they go hungry. Either way, it's quiet." Silence. Then the sound of a refrigerator door creaking open. Dempsey again, muttering, "Better this than another damn riot." The tape ended abruptly. Malik hid the recorder under a floor grate. That same night, he told a friend in the yard, "If I don't make it out, tell them where to look." The next morning, the prison went on lockdown. Malik was gone. The guards said he was transferred to Green Haven. But his name never appeared on any transfer list. 2 weeks later, Maya received another envelope, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside was a small flash drive. The label read, "Attica tape copy." She plugged it into her laptop. The same voice echoed through her speakers, the one she'd heard described in the affidavit, the one that made her skin crawl. "Better this than another damn riot." And over that, faintly in the background, another sound. A man coughing, gasping, then choking. Maya froze. Because the voice gasping on that recording wasn't random. It was Malik Davis. And the sound of him choking wasn't from fear. It was from something he'd just eaten. The missing inmate. The morning after the tape leaked to her inbox, Maya Delaney woke to the sound of pounding rain against her apartment window and the uneasy hum of a city already on edge. Her laptop was still open from the night before. The last file she'd played, the Attica tape, was paused on the waveform of a cough. Malik Davis's cough. The screen glow cast her face in blue light. She couldn't stop replaying it. The gurgling, the breath that caught halfway, the muffled thud that followed. Every time she listened, she heard something new in the background, a low whirring hum, maybe a fan or an exhaust vent. She made a note of it. If Malik had recorded that audio himself, then it wasn't just proof of neglect, it was proof of homicide. And the place he'd vanished from wasn't a prison kitchen. It was a crime scene. The disappearance. The official story, printed neatly in Attica's daily logbook, read like a clerical formality. Inmate Davis, Malik transferred November 22 to Green Haven Correctional Facility. Administrative clearance granted. But Green Haven denied receiving him. Their intake roster had no Malik Davis listed that day or any day after. Maya called the Department of Corrections Public Affairs Office. The voice on the other end was polite, monotone, practiced. "Transfers occur frequently, Ms. Delaney. Sometimes records take time to update." "How much time?" "Typically 48 hours. It's been 2 weeks. A pause. "Then, you'll need to file a formal request under Freedom of Information." Maya knew that meant forget it. Inside the walls. Back inside Attica, something had changed. Inmates whispered of a missing man. Guards walked tighter patrols. The chow line grew quieter, faces blank, hollow-eyed. Officer Dempsey, the one whose voice echoed on the tape, was suddenly nowhere to be seen. Some said he'd been reassigned. Others swore they'd seen him still coming in at night, parking behind the kitchen loading bay, his headlights off. and there was a rumor, unconfirmed but spreading fast, that the kitchen's walk-in freezer was sealed shut and marked out of service. That had never happened before. The widow's letter. 3 days later, Maya received a small brown envelope addressed in careful handwriting. Return address, Brooklyn, New York. Inside was a note, written on lined paper. Ms. Delaney, my name is Aisha Davis. Malik was my husband. I got your name from a friend. They told me you were the only one still asking questions. Please call me. I have something you need to hear. There was a phone number. Maya hesitated only a moment before dialing. The voice that answered was quiet, weary, the kind of voice that carried months of grief. They told me Malik got moved. I called Green Haven, they said no. I called Attica, they said he was fine. But his letters stopped. When did you last hear from him? Maya asked. November 20th. He said something big was coming. He said if I didn't hear from him after Thanksgiving, to tell someone what he found. Did he say what it was? Aisha hesitated. Just that it was in the food. The recordings. Maya met Aisha in a small diner near Harlem. The woman was in her mid-30s, dressed plainly, her hands trembling slightly as she unzipped a worn purse and slid an object across the table. A small black USB drive. He mailed it to me the week before he went missing, she said. Said to keep it safe. Maya plugged it into her laptop right there in the booth, the smell of burnt coffee filling the air. There were 3 audio files, each labeled by date. October_12_Attica_audio. October_28_Attica_freezer. NOV_18_last bat. She clicked the first one. The sound was muffled at first, metal clanking, trays sliding, voices in the distance. Then Malik's voice, whispering, October 12th. East Wing Kitchen. Found maggots in rice bag. Reported to Dempsey. He said to rinse it off. Maya's stomach turned. She clicked the second. A low hum, cold air rushing. Then a whisper again. Freezer smells wrong. Not meat. Something else. Rats don't even come near it anymore. Then the third recording, labeled last bat. It started normally, more ambient noise machinery. Then Malik's breathing ragged. They brought a new shipment. Box labeled Baco, same as before. But this one says, a sharp metallic sound interrupted him. A clatter, a crash, and then, hey! Who's in here? Silence. Then the same choking, gasping noise Maya had already heard on the other tape. But this time, it lasted longer. When it stopped, a door creaked. Footstep. A different voice, deep calm. Clean this up. End of file. The reporter and the lawyer. Maya took the audio straight to her editor. He listened, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. This isn't just neglect anymore, he said. This is murder. And if that's Dempsey's voice, it is, Maya said. I compared it to the kitchen logs. His voice matches. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Then this story's going to blow a hole in the state. They decided to go to print. But 2 days before the article's release, Maya got a call from Daniel Frost, an attorney for the Department of Corrections. His tone was cold. Ms. Delaney, publishing those recordings would constitute a felony. They were obtained from a secure facility. You mean from a whistleblower, she corrected. From an inmate, he said. A convicted felon with no credibility. Then why are you trying so hard to bury him? A pause. Then, you're playing with fire, Ms. Delaney. Attica has a long memory. He hung up. The internal memo. That night, another envelope arrived at Maya's office. No return address, no name. Inside, a printed internal memo marked confidential. To Warden Eric L. Schaefer from Director of Facilities Oversight Subject. Food Supply Audit, Attica Correctional, as per your request, All documentation concerning Baco distribution and related shipments from 2018 to 2019 has been sealed pending review. Do not disclose or duplicate records without express authorization from headquarters. Note: report any staff attempting to contact external media. At the bottom, someone had scrawled in pen, "He was right. It's in the food." The boiling point. Inside Attica, tension snapped. By December, the Chow Hall protests had become full-blown defiance. Inmates dumped trays onto the floor, chanting, "No more poison." Guards retaliated with lockdowns, confiscations, and solitary confinement. One inmate, a lifer named Terrence T-Bone Ellis, refused to back down. "They can starve us," he told others through the vents, "but they can't silence what's already rotten." The guards turned off the power to several blocks that night. The next morning, T-Bone was found dead. The official cause: heart failure. But the inmates said otherwise. They said his lips were blue, his skin gray, the same as Vega's, the kitchen worker from months before. And his last meal? Same gray loaf. Same batch. The hidden photograph. A week later, Maya met a retired corrections officer named Frank Walden in a diner off Route 98. He'd worked at Attica for 22 years before retiring in 2005. "I heard you're the one digging," he said. "You should stop." "Not until I know what happened to Malik Davis." Walden sighed. "That name again. You really don't understand, do you? Attica doesn't lose people. It buries them." He slid a small envelope across the table. "I found this years ago during the renovation of the East Wing freezer. Thought it might explain some things." Inside was a faded Polaroid. It showed the interior of the old walk-in freezer, boxes stacked high, frost covering the walls. But near the bottom corner, something protruded through the ice. Not a box. Not meat. A hand. The fear. Maya's editor ran the story the following week, under the title, "Rot and Silence Inside Attica, Inmates Allege Death by Food." It hit the airwaves like a thunderclap. News anchors debated it. State officials denied it. Protesters gathered outside the prison, demanding an independent investigation. But 2 days later, the Chronicle's website crashed. The article vanished. Every cached copy replaced with a 404 error. Maya called her editor, no answer. His office voicemail had been erased. And when she checked her own inbox, the emails containing Malik's audio were gone. Completely deleted. The man in the cap. That night, she sat in her car across from Attica's front gate. The rain had stopped, but fog clung to the ground like a living thing. She watched as a van pulled out of the side loading dock. No markings. No license plate. Behind the wheel, a man in a baseball cap. She couldn't see his face, but she recognized the posture. Officer Dempsey. She started her engine and followed, keeping her distance. The van turned off Route 98, heading toward a side road marked authorized vehicles only. After 10 minutes, it stopped at an old maintenance warehouse surrounded by chain-link fence. The man got out, unlocked the door, and vanished inside. Maya waited 5 minutes, then followed on foot. The warehouse was dark except for one flickering bulb. Inside were metal racks, industrial freezers, and dozens of sealed boxes stamped with the same red logo she'd seen in Malik's notes. Baco distribution. She approached one crate. The label read, "Non-cataloged protein. Do not freeze." Her heart pounded. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and lifted the lid. What she saw made her stomach twist. Inside, vacuum-sealed plastic bags filled with ground meat, gray, congealed, and mixed with something that didn't look like animal tissue. Small fragments of cloth. A fingernail. She staggered back, gagging. Then came the voice. "You should have stayed in your newsroom, Ms. Delaney." She turned. Officer Dempsey stood in the doorway, gun drawn, blocking her only exit. The warehouse of secret. The air inside the warehouse was thick and cold, but not the kind of cold that came from freezers. It was the cold of fear. Metallic, sharp, alive. Maya Delaney's breath fogged in the beam of her flashlight as she froze in place, eyes locked on the figure in the doorway. Officer Dempsey stepped forward, slow and deliberate, his boots echoing against the concrete floor. The gun in his right hand caught the flickering light overhead, the dull shine of steel contrasting the black grease under his fingernails. He smiled, not the smirk of arrogance, but the empty, weary grin of a man who'd seen too much and stopped caring long ago. "You just couldn't stay away, could you?" he said. "Always digging. Always looking where you don't belong." Maya's voice came out thin and trembling. "Where's Malik Davis?" Dempsey tilted his head. "Malik." His tone softened, almost amused. Malik was a problem. And problems get handled. Her heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear herself. "You killed him." He chuckled, a low, rasping sound. "You think I have time to kill anyone?" "No, lady. Malik killed himself, just like the others. You write that down." He gestured with the gun toward the boxes. "That's all paperwork, too. Old food stock. Nothing illegal. You city types see rot everywhere because you've never smelled real hunger." Maya swallowed hard, taking a small step backward. "What's in the meat, Dempsey?" His smile vanished. "What difference does it make? You think anyone cares what those animals eat? You think they deserve better? They killed men, burned guards alive. Nobody remembers the good ones that died cleaning up after them." He pointed the gun at her chest. "You people don't understand Attica. You never will." The flash drive. A low hum filled the silence, the steady rumble of one of the freezers running nearby. The sound reminded Maya of something, the hum she'd heard in Malik's last recording. It was the same pitch, the same rhythm. Somewhere in this building, he had recorded that tape. She needed to buy time. "You were a guard during the 2015 protest, weren't you?" Dempsey's jaw tightened. "I was the one who stopped it." "And how did you stop it?" "By feeding them spoiled food until they got sick enough to give up?" He stepped closer. "You're walking on sacred ground, Miss Reporter. Every guard who's worked this job knows one truth: if they eat, they fight. If they're hungry, they behave. That's the only law that works in there." "By poisoning them?" she shot back. Dempsey's finger twitched on the trigger. "By reminding them they're prisoners." Maya's hand brushed against her pocket. The flash drive from Aisha, the one containing Malik's last recordings, was still there. She could feel the sharp edge of its casing pressing against her thigh. Her other hand inched toward her phone in her jacket pocket. If she could record this, it could end him. The distraction. Dempsey's eyes flicked toward the boxes again. "You shouldn't have seen this." "What is this?" she pressed. "You've got freezers full of meat labeled as non-cataloged protein. You were selling expired food to the state, weren't you? Making a profit off human misery." He laughed, but there was no joy in it, just exhaustion. "You think this was about money?" "Lady, everything's about survival. They don't fund us. They cut our budgets every year, expect miracles. So we make it work. Sometimes you cut corners. Sometimes you get creative." He pointed toward the nearest freezer. "You want to see what creativity looks like? Go ahead. Open it." Her pulse spiked. "No," he raised the gun. "Open it." With trembling hands, Maya stepped to the freezer door and pulled the handle. A rush of freezing air poured out, coating her face in icy mist. Inside were bags of ground meat stacked to the ceiling. The smell hit next, rotten metallic with an undertone of bleach. But beneath the rot was something else, sweet, almost chemical. She covered her mouth, fighting nausea. "Oh my God, yeah," Dempsey said behind her. "That's what's left when you don't have storage, when the state won't pay for refrigeration. They rot, we bleach 'em, repackage 'em. Keeps the numbers clean." Maya turned, her voice breaking. You served this to human beings. He shrugged. Human beings? That was the moment she realized Dempsey wasn't just hiding crimes. He believed what he was doing was righteous. And that made him far more dangerous. The struggle. When she took a step back, her foot hit a piece of loose metal, one of the crate lids. It clanged loudly against the concrete. Dempsey flinched. In that split second, Maya dove sideways, grabbing the nearest object, a crowbar leaning against the wall. The gun fired once. The shot cracked through the cold air, ricocheting off the metal shelves. She swung the crowbar blindly. It connected with something hard, a sickening crunch and a grunt. Dempsey dropped the gun, stumbling backward into one of the crates. She ran. Her lungs burned as she sprinted toward the back door. Behind her, Dempsey shouted, voice raw and furious. You think they'll believe you? You're just another lying reporter. She slammed through the exit and into the freezing rain. The mud clung to her shoes as she stumbled toward her car parked off the access road. Her hands trembled as she jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered. Come on, come on. The headlights flared to life just as Dempsey staggered into the doorway, blood streaming from a gash above his eye. He raised the gun again. Maya hit the gas. The car lurched forward, tires spinning in the mud before finding traction. She heard the crack of another gunshot behind her, glass shattering as the bullet punched through her rear window. She didn't look back. The upload. She drove until the prison lights were no longer visible in the fog. Her hands shook as she pulled off onto an empty service road and parked beneath a flickering street lamp. The flash drive. The recordings. Dempsey's confession, all of it needed to be backed up now. She connected her phone hotspot and began uploading everything to a secure cloud archive she used for investigative work. The file name, Attica_food system_case 3 progress, 15%, 48%, 92%. Complete. She exhaled shakily, her heart still racing. The return. By morning, her story was everywhere. The local radio station aired snippets of the audio recordings. Online headlines screamed, Inside Attica, whistleblower recordings reveal toxic food cover-up. Investigation links Yex prison staff to state food contract fraud. Did New York's deadliest prison feed inmates poison? But Maya didn't celebrate. Because Dempsey wasn't found at the warehouse. When police arrived hours later, he was gone. And the freezer? Empty. Every box removed. Every trace erased. Only one thing remained, a note taped to the inside of the door. You can't feed justice what it won't swallow. The Bureau's involvement days later, the FBI opened a formal inquiry. Evidence tied Baco distribution to at least 3 other facilities, Sing Sing, Rikers, and Auburn. Millions of dollars in fraudulent supply invoices were discovered. But Dempsey remained missing. Some said he'd fled the state. Others whispered he'd never left Attica. Then, a week after the warehouse raid, a new package arrived at Maya's office. No return address. Inside was a CD. Handwritten across the top, The Real Kitchen. She slid it into her laptop. Grainy black and white footage filled the screen, security camera angles from Attica's kitchen. Dated October 2019. Inmates in aprons worked over steaming pot. A guard entered frame, tall, square-shouldered. Dempsey. He shouted something off-screen, then dragged an inmate forward. The man resisted, struggling. Dempsey slammed him against the counter. The inmate screamed. The guard forced his head down into a pot. Steam erupted. The image cut to static. Maya's hand trembled as she hit pause. She rewound, freezing the frame just before the act. The inmate's face was visible, barely. It was Malik Davis. The twist. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered, her voice barely a whisper. Who is this? A pause. Then, a man's voice, hoarse, quiet. You think I'm the monster, Miss Delaney? I didn't make the system. I just fed it. She froze. It was Dempsey. They'll shut it all down now, you know. Not just Attica. Every kitchen. Every program. And you'll think you saved them, but you'll just make them hungrier. Click. The line went dead. That night, the story exploded nationally. The governor promised reform. The Department of Corrections denied everything. But deep in the state's archives, buried under sealed investigations, a single entry appeared with a new label: Attica Food System, Baco Operation. Status: contained. The timestamp on the file? Same time as Dempsey's call. And one final line of metadata beneath it: last modified by R. Dempsey. Maya stared at her screen, a chill crawling up her spine. He wasn't hiding. He was still in the system, inside it, somewhere, feeding it from within. She whispered to herself, voice cracking in the quiet. The kitchen never closes. The ghost contract. When truth finally breaks the surface, it never does so quietly. It tears through the walls of power like a slow explosion, one that keeps burning long after the headlines fade. For Maya Delaney, that explosion began the morning the governor's office went silent. 4 days, every agency, the Department of Corrections, the Attorney General, even the FBI, had promised complete cooperation. But overnight, all communication stopped. Calls went unanswered. Emails bounced. Her credentials for the state database suddenly expired. And then, without warning, her apartment door buzzed. 2 men in dark suits stood outside. The visit. Ms. Delaney. The taller one flashed a badge, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The name read Agent Hale. His partner remained quiet, scanning the hallway. We'd like to ask a few questions about your recent reporting on Attica Correctional. Maya hesitated. I already gave the Bureau everything I had. That's just it, Hale said, voice level. Some of the data you uploaded doesn't match our records. She frowned. What do you mean? He held up a folder. Inside were copies of invoices she'd published in her article, the Baco distribution contract. But the company name on these copies wasn't Baco anymore. It was Arcadia Food Services. Same logo. Same signature. Same dates. Only the name had changed. They're scrubbing it, Maya whispered. Hale nodded grimly. Someone inside the system's rewriting history. We've seen this before. The deleted company. Later that night, Maya sat in her car outside the Public Records building in Albany, waiting for her contact, a state clerk named Tom McCree, who had quietly helped her access Attica's archive data during her investigation. When he finally appeared, he looked nervous. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red. You didn't get this from me, he said, sliding a USB across the dashboard. Everything Baco touched, invoices, personnel records, emails, it's all being rebranded under Arcadia. They started 3 days ago. Digital overwrites, backdated authorizations, the works. Who signed the rebrand? He hesitated. Not a prison official. Hire. Someone from the governor's office. Name. He swallowed hard. Eleanor Pierce. Maya's stomach dropped. Pierce wasn't just anyone, she was the governor's chief of staff, known for her spotless record and iron loyalty. If Pierce was involved, this wasn't a correctional cover-up anymore. This was state-level protection. The whistleblower. 3 days later, an email arrived from an encrypted address she didn't recognize. Subject: We worked for Baco too. The message was short: meet me tonight. No phones. 11:30 p.m., East Pier Warehouse, Rochester. Come alone. Attached was a photo, an old employee ID card stamped Baco Logistic. The man's name, Dr. Caleb Henders, nutrition consultant. Maya searched the archives. He'd been listed as a civilian contractor for multiple prisons between 2017 and 2020, including Attica. The last note on his file read, "Deceased, self-inflicted." The meeting. The pier was deserted except for the whisper of waves slapping against the rotting wood. Maya parked under a dead street lamp, keeping her camera rolling discreetly in her coat pocket. A shadow moved near the edge of the dock. "Dr. Henders?" she called softly. The man stepped into the faint light, older, gaunt, with the hollow look of someone who hadn't slept in weeks. His clothes hung loose, his eyes darting to every sound. "They said I was dead," he muttered. "Guess they weren't wrong. Just early. Why contact me?" "Because you're the only one still telling the truth," he said. "And because I helped make the problem you're trying to solve." He handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on here: lab reports, procurement chains, the names behind Arcadia. You'll see for yourself." "What's on it?" "The formula." Maya blinked. "Formula?" He nodded. "They called it Protein X. It started as an efficiency project, powdered protein substitute made from synthetic compounds and organic waste. Cheaper than meat, longer shelf life. But then they changed the ratios. Added stabilizers, ammonia compounds, calcium nitrate. Made it look like ground beef. Problem was, it wasn't safe for humans. Why use it in prisons? He laughed bitterly. Because no one checks prison food. It's off the books. They needed test subjects. Her skin crawled. And Baco distributed it? Under government contract, he said. Signed by Eleanor Pierce herself. The revelation. Back home, Maya opened the flash drive. Inside was a folder titled Ghost Contracts. Hundreds of PDFs. Invoices stamped with official seals, all identical. Arcadia/Baco, Prison Nutritional Supply Program, classified. One document caught her eye, a payment schedule to Baco Holdings DIV. Attica Operations, totaling $18.7 million. The authorization signature, E. Pierce. And beneath that, one chilling footnote. Subject batches contain modified organic filler approved for institutional testing under NYS Correctional Regulation 14B. It wasn't food. It was experimentation. The setup. Maya sent copies to her editor, her lawyer, and Agent Hale. Within an hour, her phone started buzzing non-stop. Unknown numbers, private lines, blocked callers. One voicemail came through, a calm female voice. "Ms. Delaney, this is Eleanor Pierce. We need to speak. Tonight. I believe you've been misinformed." Maya froze. She'd expected a denial, maybe a legal threat, not a conversation. "Where?" she asked when she finally returned the call. "State Capitol. 10 p.m. Come through the west entrance. Discretion is appreciated." The confrontation. The Capitol was nearly empty by the time Maya arrived. Security guards nodded her through without question. Eleanor Pierce's office sat at the end of a long marble hallway, light spilling from beneath the door. Inside, Pierce sat behind a mahogany desk, immaculate in a navy suit. Her hair was neat, her expression unreadable. "You've made quite the mess," Pierce said, gesturing for Maya to sit. "I could say the same to you," Maya replied. Pierce smiled thinly. "You think you've uncovered some monstrous conspiracy. But you don't understand what happens when funding disappears, when politicians cut corners. Someone has to keep the system running. By feeding inmates industrial waste? By feeding them something that keeps them alive," Pierce snapped. "You want to know what happens when 4,000 prisoners go hungry? Look up 1971. Attica burned. Guards died. The state can't afford that again. That doesn't justify murder." Pierce leaned forward. "It justifies survival. You think you're saving them, but you're not. You're pulling at threads you don't understand." Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Agent Hale. "We traced Arcadia's parent company. It's not you, based. Leave now. Her pulse quickened. She rose from her chair. Pierce didn't stop her. She only said, quietly, you can publish what you like. But the moment you do, remember, systems that feed on people don't die. They evolve. The explosion. Maya was halfway to the parking lot when the Capitol lights flickered. A low rumble shook the ground, followed by the echo of shattering glass. Smoke. Fire alarms. Shouts. She turned just in time to see flames erupting from the West Wing, Pierce's office. She ran back, but security stopped her. Within minutes, emergency vehicles surrounded the building. The official story would call it an electrical fire. But the next morning, Pierce's death was ruled accidental, and all files from her office were lost. The clue left behind 2 days later, a package arrived at Maya's doorstep. No return address. Inside, a single photo of a document corner burned around the edges. The visible text read, Arcadia Holdings, Contract Renewal. Oversight by R. Dempsey. And beneath it, a handwritten note, he's still feeding them. That night, Maya uploaded the ghost contracts to a secure international news network, ensuring the files couldn't be buried again. But as she sat alone in her apartment, watching the upload bar crawl forward, her laptop flickered. Then a message appeared on the screen, no sender, just plain text. Nice try, Maya. You exposed one kitchen. There are 50 more. The upload completed. The lights went out. And somewhere, deep inside the state database, a new project folder opened automatically. Project Arcadia. Status active. The system that eats itself. The city slept beneath a bruised sky. From her apartment window, Maya Delaney watched rain streak the glass in thin silver threads, each one catching the amber glow of the streetlight outside. It had been 3 days since the Capitol fire, 3 days since Eleanor Pierce's death, and 3 days since every major outlet in the country had received copies of the ghost contract. The story had detonated globally. The New York Times, BBC, Reuters, Le Monde, all running the same headline, Prison Food Experimentation Scandal, U.S. Contractor under investigation. But Maya felt no victory. Because behind the headlines, the system was shifting, quietly, invisibly, covering its tracks just as fast as the world discovered them. The return. At 2:17 a.m., her phone vibrated. No caller ID. She hesitated, then answered. Maya, a voice rasped. Her blood ran cold. Dempsey. You still don't get it, he said. Pierce wasn't the top. She was just another mouth in the chain. You think they'll let you end this? You think the machine stops feeding because you scream loud enough? You killed Malik, she said, voice trembling with anger. You killed him to protect that chain. No, he said quietly. I killed him to warn you. Static crackled across the line. She heard movement, boots on wet concrete, metal creaking. Meet me, he said. Warehouse 9, Buffalo Docks. Midnight. Bring a recorder. I'll give you the rest. Then we're even. The call cut out. Maya stood in silence, her heart thundering. It could be a trap. But it could also be the truth. The docks. Midnight found her at the waterfront. The wind howled through rows of abandoned shipping containers, carrying the smell of diesel and rot. She clutched her camera under her coat, rain soaking through her sleeves. Somewhere ahead, a single floodlight flickered, half dead, half alive. Then she saw him. Robert Dempsey, standing under the light like a ghost pulled from a nightmare. His prison guard jacket was gone, replaced with a plain windbreaker. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken, but still sharp. You came, he said, voice almost a sigh. You wanted me here. Talk. He looked past her, scanning the darkness. They'll be listening. We have minutes, maybe less. She pressed the recorder button. The faint red light blinked between them. The confession. Dempsey's voice was low, almost monotone, like a man reading his own obituary. It started in 2014. Budget cuts hit hard. They told us to stretch the food supply. Then this company, Baco, comes in with Protein X. Claimed it could feed the whole system for half the cost. They lied, Maya said. He shook his head. Not at first. It worked for a while. But the compound was unstable. Caused infections, stomach failure. We filed complaints. Instead of stopping it, they doubled down. Why? Because someone realized they could sell it overseas. Military contracts. Refugee camp. Places that don't ask questions. They needed field data, human data. And prisoners were convenient. Maya felt her chest tighten. And you helped them. He looked away. I thought I was keeping order. I told myself it was just food. But when the inmates started dying, I went to Pierce. She told me the state couldn't afford a scandal. Then she handed me a promotion. You stayed quiet. He nodded slowly. Until Malik. The tape. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small cassette tape. It was old, cracked, the label faded but still legible. Attica Control Log Number 7. This is the original audio, Dempsey said. The one you never heard. Malik recorded more than you think. He handed it to her. Play it somewhere safe. When you do, you'll understand why they killed him. Maya took the tape, her hands trembling. Why trust me now? Because I'm already dead, he said quietly. They just haven't buried me yet. The ambush. The sound came first, a low growl of engines approaching fast. Headlights cut through the fog. Black SUVs. No plates. Dempsey's expression hardened. Run. Before she could react, the floodlight shattered under gunfire. The world erupted in chaos, glass, shouting, the crack of suppressed rifles. Dempsey shoved her behind a container and fired back with a small handgun. They can't let this leak. They'll erase both of us. Who are they? She shouted over the gunfire. The ones who built Arcadia. A bullet slammed into the metal near her head. Dempsey returned fire, 1-2 shots, then stumbled, clutching his side. Go, he hissed, blood pouring through his fingers. Maya grabbed the tape and ran. The rain turned red beneath her shoes. Behind her, another volley rang out. When she looked back, Dempsey was gone. The hidden track. Hours later, Maya sat in a motel room on the outskirts of Buffalo. The tape recorder buzzed softly beside her, the old cassette spinning. At first, just static. Then Malik's voice. Control Log Number 7. November 18th. Testing new batch. They said it's fortified. Smells worse than usual. I saw something today. Crate came in marked medical waste. Dempsey told us not to open it. But I did. It wasn't waste. It was tissue. A pause. They're grinding it. Calling it protein. We're eating them. The tape clicked. Maya sat frozen, bile rising in her throat. Her eyes drifted to the cassette label, where a faint signature had been written in pen beneath the typed words. Dr. Caleb Henders, the nutritionist. The man who'd given her the ghost contract. The man who was supposed to be dead. The broadcast. By dawn, she made her decision. She uploaded the audio to every public platform she could. Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, encrypted forums, anything that couldn't be fully deleted. The file title, Attica Control Log Number 7, The Truth About Protein X. Within hours, it was viral. Millions listened. Millions recoiled. Protests erupted outside prisons across the country. Inmates staged hunger strikes from Rikers to Lompoc. The government denied it all. Then, suddenly, Arcadia's website went dark. A single message replaced the homepage, feeding the future, one body at a time. Then the domain disappeared entirely. The fallout. Investigations swept through the Department of Corrections. Federal raids uncovered warehouses filled with mislabeled supplies. The ingredients matched the protein compound in Attica's kitchen samples, a blend of synthetic filler, animal byproduct, and biological tissue of unknown origin. When asked to comment, a federal spokesperson simply said, "National security matter." Every official named in the ghost contracts vanished from public view. Arrests were promised but never confirmed. And as the chaos grew, so did the fear that Arcadia wasn't gone, it had just moved offshore. The final encounter. Weeks later, Maya returned to Attica. The prison loomed like a scar against the winter sky, its towers sharp, its walls slick with rain. She walked past the main gate with a federal escort. Inside the kitchen, the ovens were cold, the freezers sealed. But one vent was still warm. In the corner, carved into the wall with something sharp, were 3 words: "We fed them." Her escort turned pale. "You shouldn't be in here." "I have to be," she whispered. The message that night, back in her car, her phone buzzed. One new message. No number. She opened it. A photo, an offshore facility surrounded by water, workers in hazmat suits unloading containers labeled Arcadia, nutritional exports. And beneath it, a single sentence: "The system never sleeps. It just eats slower." The ending: the world would remember Attica for its riot. But those who knew the truth, those who'd read Maya's files, heard Malik's final words, seen Dempsey's confession, would remember it for something darker. Not a riot. Not a rebellion. A warning. Because in the end, it wasn't just about prisons. It was about what happens when human life becomes a number, when the hunger of a system outweighs the value of a soul. And somewhere, deep inside another warehouse on another coast, machines hummed to life. Freezers buzzed. Labels printed. Project Arcadia. Global distribution initiated. The sound of steel doors closing echoed across the screen. Then black.